Hey guys, Lex here again. How are you? So as I've mentioned across some of my more recent videos, on a whim I decided to try the solo self-found hardcore league in Path of Exile 2 on Warrior because Warrior is all I play and all I ever will play. That's just how I am in RPGs. I always tunnel vision the Warrior class and I just love getting as good as I can at them, so that's how it's going to be. And honestly, before I started, I kind of had a general idea of how I wanted to build this character and how I wanted to level, what I'd prioritize, etc. And it's been really smooth sailing so far, honestly. Not a lot of close calls at all. Though I'm now getting towards the end of Act 2, and I gotta say, I think the Act 2 boss and the Trial of Sekhemas are two of my biggest fears for this run, so we'll just have to see how those go. I haven't beat either at the time of this recording, but I'll probably have done so by the time I post this video, so I'll include the footage at the end of how those went, hopefully, of me not dying. And I gotta say, in solo self-found hardcore mode, good gear drops feel so much more impactful and rewarding, and I really like how you to kind of like adapt your build or your stats based on how the pacing of the playthrough goes. I mean, I could be wrong here. You'll have to tell me if you disagree, but I feel like the hardest part of reaching the end game in this league is the first playthrough of the acts, where you have to really pay attention to how your itemization is doing and how your build is shaping up on the passive skill tree so that, monster damage or monster life doesn't outpace you as you're progressing through the acts. And I'm not there yet in this league, obviously, but yeah, in softcore, when you go through the cruel difficulty of the acts, the itemization feels like it's a little more powerful. The boss fights don't feel quite as punishing, so I feel like it feels easier that second playthrough. Maybe it's game knowledge, I'm not really sure. So yeah, in this video I just wanted to provide you with my leveling build for this league specifically, but I'll also go over my thoughts that are useful for just general warrior leveling in any league, because a lot of you have been asking me for a leveling build, especially with the Magma Barrier skill, which is a skill this build also uses, so I'm going to go over that, but also I'll provide some tips and tricks for hardcore solo self-found that I've learned as I've been, working my way through the acts. And real quick, I wanted to shout out another creator. His name is Blazeworks TV, and I think it was serendipitous that his video autoplayed for me as I was playing one night, as I had Path of Exile 2 content rolling in the background. He actually has a video on hardcore solo self-found on a warrior as well, and it was just super validating hearing his thought process essentially align with mine. We both had the same idea of going super tanky as hell on a warrior, but I will say that he has some other useful tips and tricks on his video. It just has an overall cool vibe, so honestly give his video a watch too. It's going to be linked in the description, but for now, let's talk about my character. So this section is definitely going to be faster than my previous video since I don't have as many skills to go over this time around, but I think I'll go over each skill and their relevance in Act 1 and Act 2, different support gem considerations, or which support gems you should definitely use, etc. And again, I think overall my choices would be the same for these skills and support gems outside of this league, just in general, so let's get started. We're going to start with Mace Strike, which is ironically one of the most important skills on your warrior in the early game, and possibly throughout your entire first playthrough of the act. It's pretty much your main way to deal sustained damage over time, so it's really strong, really powerful. One of the best auto attacks in the game from what I understand, but anyways, I really think that the best support gems you can put into this thing when you're in Act 1 and getting your very first support gems is going to be Rage and Martial Tempo. Alright, so let's go over Rage. I want to explain Rage real quick for any newbies out there. Rage stacks build up as you hit things with the ability that this gem is socketed into, and you do 1% more attack damage per rage stack, and you get 3 rage stacks per Mace Strike when it's socketed like this. So it'll just help you do more damage as you hit things with this ability, up to a maximum of 30% since rage stacks up to 30 maximum, and this is your main way of dealing single target damage in the early game, so you'll be smacking bosses and rares a lot with this thing. So the second support gem, Martial Tempo, which is actually down here in Perfect Strike right now. I'll just switch them around because you don't have Perfect Strike early in the game. You're going to want these two gems, when you first start out. Your first 2 support gems are likely going to go into these two. So anyways, second support gem, Martial Tempo, increases your attack speed by 25%, which in turn increases the DPS by a significant margin. So you can actually see the damage difference here real quick. You can see Fire Infusion lets you gain 25% of your damage as extra fire damage. It's a really useful gem, and we have a 549 listed DPS with this thing. However, if we switch these around, we go from 549 to 588. Again, Martial Tempo is really strong on the auto attack. It makes you swing a lot faster. We'll get into why it's slotted into Perfect Strike in a bit, but for when you're starting the game out, you want Martial Tempo and Rage in this ability. So yeah, I mean, other than that, it's pretty straightforward, 25% more attack speed. However, something to note is that it synergizes really well with Rage because it'll let you build up your Rage faster since you are swinging faster. So you're going to get those 3 Rage per swing stacks building up way faster with Martial Tempo. So I really do think this combination for the early game is a really strong one. However, since we're about to go over Perfect Strike, Strike, I'm going to switch these around because in Act 2, or actually towards the end of Act 1 is when you get Perfect Strike. Martial Tempo is way more important for Perfect Strike than it is for Mace Strike, and obviously I just put Fire Infusion here so that Mace Strike hits a little harder. It's still going to be one of your main ways to deal damage, but Perfect Strike, it's more important to have Martial Tempo here. But yeah, let's talk about Perfect Strike. So this is your boss kill move, and maybe you use it against rares every now and then too, but this thing hurts, and you want it to hurt as much as possible. Only 2 sockets for now, obviously Martial Tempo as we just went over, because this ability is relatively slow, but it can be quite fast actually, based on which passive nodes you get in the passive skill tree and what type of mace you are using during your playthrough. Here real quick, just as an example, I'm using the plated mace here, which has a lower attacks per second than something like a slim mace. That means that the plated mace is actually on the slower end of swing speed, and let's see if Shambrin has an example here actually. While something like even this spiked club of combat has 1.45 attacks per second, while this has 1.4, so this spiked club would actually be swinging quite a bit faster than the plated mace, just based on mace type. And that means an even faster Perfect Strike since it has higher attacks per second. But yeah, let's go over the second support gem. It is Window of Opportunity, and I've explained this one before, but it basically shortens the perfect timing window of the ability, so you have to be a bit more precise when you let go of the whatever input you bind this ability to, but that extra 50% damage is super worth it, and it's going to help you delete bosses and rares that much faster. However, there is another very important component to this ability's potential to wipe out bosses, and that's from Infernal Cry. So Infernal Cry you get fairly early on. I think it's a level 3 skill gem. But yeah, this thing is very powerful, and its ability to empower your attacks based on, well, 2 things. 1, the power of enemies in range. Well, let me explain the tooltip. You know what, I'm actually going to expand the power keyword while I'm describing this. So basically, the targets caught in the AoE of Infernal Cry all have different power levels, with trash mobs having the lowest at 1 and bosses having the highest at 20. You will gain 25% of your damage as fire damage per 5 power of enemies in range of Infernal Cry when you cast it, up to a 100% maximum. So basically in a boss fight, as long as you actually hit the boss with this ability, you're going to gain that 100% maximum every time, since they're worth 20 power. It is super important that you empower your Perfect Strike so that they gain that 100% damage in a boss fight. It makes a huge difference, not just Perfect Strike hitting harder, but also the ignite damage that follows doing more work. It's really, really important. It's really efficient. Just make sure you shout. Just program it in your head. Shout before you cast Perfect Strike, against the boss, especially if they're stunned. That you have all the time in the world. Also, bonus points if you went Magma Barrier for your first R. Obviously I did because it's part of my build, because the shout can empower more than 1 Perfect Strike if you're able to gain some endurance charges for it to consume, which Magma Barrier will help you get. I know you won't be able to stack endurance charges with Magma Barrier in every boss fight, but you can in quite a few. You might be surprised. The Act 1 boss has attacks you can block, the Act 2 boss has attacks you can block, as well as a bunch of minor bosses found throughout the campaign. Anyways, I currently have Premeditation socketed here. Very straightforward. Basically, skills that are empowered by the shout will deal 15% more damage, so that makes Perfect Strike hit even harder. And at this point, that's pretty much my main concern, is making sure bosses are going down fast enough while being tanky, and this setup has been working super well so far. Still need to decide on a second support gem for this one. I haven't really decided yet. I may just wait till level 2 support gems are unlocked in Act 3 for something a little juicier, but yeah, for now I feel like I have the most important level 1 support gem in this skill, so I'm good for now. Next up we have Shield Charge, and this is currently hitting for an okay amount. You can see it's 168. It's no Mace Strike or Perfect Strike, but it's something. This is really used for 2 things. 1, stun buildup, and 2, traveling around the map, honestly. I have Concentrated Effect here for now. It's honestly a big damage boost, but I don't think I'm going to keep it here. I'm just waiting to unlock another ability that makes sense to socket this into. I know the game automatically suggests you socket this into Boneshatter, but I could not disagree more. I think Boneshatter is one of your best ways to clear groups in the early game, possibly all the way through Act 3 if you're not using Sunder and such. So having the AoE reduced on Boneshatter makes 0 sense to me, as well as the increased damage. Honestly, it does plenty of damage. We're going to talk about Boneshatter in a bit, so I'll stop for now. But yeah, for a second gem we have Stomping Ground, which is actually hitting kind of hard because we have so much strength on this character. Real quick, the Shockwave scales with strength, as you can see, deals 80% to 120% of your strength as physical damage. So it's honestly not bad, but it's kind of hard to hit enemies with it sometimes since it like trails behind you. There are multiple circles left in your wake. But yeah, you have to have enemies like walk to where you just were after the charge, so it's kind of hard to hit them with it sometimes, but when they do get hit by it, it's noticeable damage. Alright, and Boneshatter is up next. Amazing, amazing ability. Main way to clear crowds, as I mentioned earlier, and as soon as you equip this ability, you're basically looking for that primed for stun symbol for you to thwack. You'll see it floating above all sorts of mobs' heads when they're primed for it. That's basically your signal to hit them with this ability. Keep in mind, it's sometimes worth it to lure a primed for stun mob to follow you if you think there's like another group nearby. I'll just have the primed for stun mob follow me to the group, and then I'll just clap it with a Boneshatter next to the group, and the group is subsequently wiped out by the shockwave. Easy. The 2 support gems are as follows. We start with impact shockwave for sure. You definitely want to start with this because it will cause an aftershock when you inflict a heavy stun with the supported ability, and that's perfect for Boneshatter with how it works, you know, as a baseline. You are looking to heavy stun things with Boneshatter. But yeah, the aftershock essentially doubles the damage of Boneshatter. If you read the aftershock description real quick in that second half there, the aftershock will deal the same damage as the initial impact in the same area. So you're going to deal a lot of damage if you use this ability to heavy stun a thing. And for the second gem, I have Magnified Effect. This will increase the shockwave radius, which I feel is just so much more effective than reducing the AoE and increasing the damage from concentrated effect, as I said earlier. And you can see that this thing deals plenty of damage with the shockwave damage. Just real quick, let's look at the damage. For shockwave, it does 479% damage, attack damage. So honestly, I don't feel like you need concentrated effect here. You'd rather have it hit more targets, which is why Magnified Effect is here. And then you get the 2x multiplier with the Aftershock anyway, so I don't feel like you need that other concentrated effect gem in here. You know, I could see you swapping sockets of Magnified Effect and Concentrated Effect if you're against a boss that you know you're going to heavy stun. You know, the AoE doesn't matter as much. You'd rather hit for harder. But ultimately, I just keep Magnified Effect here, maybe because I'm lazy, you know. It's up to you. Shockwave Totem is here mostly as a distraction, honestly. I just hope that it taunts mobs sometimes, but I'm not really investing anything in it yet. I don't know if this is going to be a totem build or anything. It depends on the type of gear I end up finding, but for now I'm not investing in it because I want my build to be a little more general, if that makes sense, you know, so that more equipment drops will be relevant to me and will be more of an upgrade to me. And if you're investing into totems, I feel like you really need specific roles, so yeah, we'll just have to see what happens as I progress. And you already know I love Magma Barrier. I think it's particularly good for solo self-found hardcore because, as I said in my last video, it allows you to deal a decent amount of damage and prime things for stun from safety, which is most important. You are attacking and priming things for stun while blocking all hits from your front, so it honestly feels really good to use in a big group or like an oh shit situation if you have the timing down. I know the damage scaling is a bit nutty when you're able to boost the gem level up, as you've seen from my other videos, but for now it's not my main damage dealer. I mean, that might change if I find a really good shield, but for progression right now I'm just using Boneshatter, Mace Strike, and Empowered Perfect Strikes. And real quick, the support gems are Overpower. This is obviously the thing that's helping us prime things for stun safely. It depends on the mobs and, like, you know, how much damage Magma Barrier is doing, but you can prime things for stuns in around 2 Magma Barriers, sometimes 1, sometimes 3. I haven't seen it go up to 4, so it's pretty quick how you can prime things for stuns. And again, most importantly, it's from safety. You know, you're blocking all attacks from your front, so you can prime things for stuns and then just bone shatter a crowd if you're in like a really tense situation. And the second skill gem is Ignition. This is just igniting things. Honestly, it doesn't do that much damage since Magma Barrier currently doesn't hit that hard. I'd rather have this in something else that hits harder, since Ignite damage scales with how hard something hits, but really it's just a matter of limited gem sockets. You know, I only have 2 for each ability right now, so it's going to sit here for now, but I'd probably have this on something that hits a little harder, maybe even Mace Strike. Anyways, yeah, just something that hits really hard is where this should stay, but for now it's here until I get those you know, new abilities or new gem sockets. And that's basically it. You know, I was using Earth Shatter for a little bit as well, but honestly the damage just felt so mid, even when boosted with support gems compared to these other abilities, so I just ended up stashing it. The current set of skills is what I am rolling with to clean up Act 2. So with all that wrapped up, let's take a look at how the passive skill tree supports all this. Alright, I'm back over here. So, I'm going to discuss the route that I took, but also the order in which I generally wanted to progress things, so pay attention to that. But I went with this lower path here because, well, it's overall a tankier progression. Pretty much just grabbing strength for each pathing node. I grabbed intelligence here for support gems, but I also grabbed this notable passive, which gives you a huge chunk of armor, a good bit of strength, and some life regen per second. I don't know how y'all feel about life regen. It's kind of okay. Honestly, it felt pretty good in the early game, but it's really about the armor and the strength here. Again, we're just trying to pump up survivability. And I would argue that having a good bit of armor during your first playthrough of the axe, and even on cruel difficulty, is going to save you a lot. It reduces a good bit of damage. Towards the end game, it starts losing a little bit of usefulness because bosses are going to be hitting you so hard, and the things that end up killing you don't really, armor wouldn't save you from those things. But when progressing through the axe for the first time and the second time, armor is pretty useful. However, I haven't done this on this particular league, though I have done it on others and using like a two-hander on another warrior. If you want a more damagey, aggressive progression, I would recommend pathing with this top path here until you get this node here. Brutal, which is honestly really strong. 10% stun buildup is great. 16% increased melee damage is awesome. 10 strength, really strong node for like an aggressive play style. And you can see I ultimately pathed up to it on my build as well, but not till later. There's something else I was going after early on. But yeah, if you're going to do this more aggressive pathing, grabbing these nodes to start out, then go down here to grab brutal. I would even progress over here, more melee damage. Then you get smash, which is 20% just passive melee damage, also really good. 40% increased melee damage against heavy stunned enemies is pretty good. It sounds good on paper. I think, it's not as relevant as some people think it is. You are going to be heavy stunning things, but that 40% increased melee damage is just inactive when things aren't heavy stunned. So, it's okay. It's okay. And then you have two choices from here. You can grab these two melee damage nodes and then connect to these pathing nodes and then eventually go down this way. Or you can just, say smash is good enough and then progress from this node and grab these two pathing nodes and then connect down this way. You save one passive point if you go this other route with the pathing nodes. You have to use like 3 to get here and then connect to this path. I do think you want to eventually go down here though. Again, that aggressive path is something I played around in a non-hardcore league, and honestly, between those two different progressions, you will definitely notice the damage difference even that early on. Yeah, again, pathing up here and taking this route will let you deal more damage and prime things for stun faster, especially if you're using a two-hander. But again, since dying in hardcore means your character is over, I opted to go with the southern route, the safer, tankier route, down here. But yeah, as I was saying, after I grabbed this notable, I actually did not grab these or these nodes early on. I actually progressed down here and grabbed these armor nodes first and then got Blade Catcher. Lets you defend with 200% of your armor against critical hits, which is pretty useful, but again, 15 strength, just huge chunk of life. And then I eventually progressed down here for even more life, 8 strength, 25 strength, 8 strength, just tons of life and armor so that you don't, have a fear of dying essentially. And from here, I think you could do two things. You could go this way and grab these one-handed nodes here. I think you will have to do this at some point, but it's between getting this first or getting Resolute Technique earlier. You will start in towards the end of Act 1 and especially in Act 2, you'll start feeling like you're missing things a little, not too often, but you'll start noticing these misses. And it can feel pretty soul crushing when you have a big group that you're dealing with. You have something primed for stun. You're like, all right, I'm gonna wipe them out. You throw a Boneshatter out and then it just misses. So I actually prioritized pathing to this one first because I felt like it would make more of a difference than just some extra damage at the time, because I could not miss, and I felt like that could cost me my life if I went in for a big Boneshatter and then I just got clapped because I didn't even kill anything, just missed. But yeah, then I wrapped back around from this pathing node as I was saying and grabbed these one-handed damage nodes, which are all really useful. I would like to go Giant's Blood, I think, on this character and with the Titan Ascendancy, so I might switch these around when it makes sense to. But again, these are nice damage boosts to one-handers, and this is honestly a pretty big swing speed boost between these two. You get 15 dexterity as well, so that's really good for your support gems. You use quite a few dexterity support gems, but these are all damage nodes and the attack speed nodes. This also gives you 10% chance to maim on hit. That's okay. I don't really notice it that much, to be honest. It's really about the 25% damage there. But yeah, what's nice about this particular path here as a melee warrior is that you have all these branches that you can put points into when you're either lacking damage or lacking survivability. If you lack damage, as I have, I started speccing down here for more damage and reduced swing speed. So each of these nodes gives you a huge damage gain for pretty minimal swing speed loss, especially since we have those points in the one-handed swing speed nodes like up here. Pretty sure you're net gaining 3% swing speed when you have all of these and all of these, so you're not losing any swing speed. And as you can see, I'm currently speccing into strength and the stun threshold here because I feel like I need a little survivability at the moment. And I think I have two considerations as far as progression from here. I think I'm most likely going to continue down this path. I'm not sure about the armor break stuff yet, as I want to go Titan on this character, and armor break on hit is more of a Warbringer thing, so we'll see. I might be able to find it useful with armor break support gems and abilities. I don't know yet, but I think I'll definitely be pathing down here at some point. Yeah, for Giant's Blood, and then grabbing these strength nodes here. They reduce your mana, but it's just a ton of strength, you know, which is more survivability, which is really important for hardcore. So that's my reasoning. Well, on that note, I think I would path up here for blood magic too, because this removes all mana, so that basically removes that downside, right? And it makes sense for me to use life anyway, right, since I'm going to be stacking so much strength as a Titan, so I think that makes sense. For more damage, I'm considering these Mace Strike nodes here. I mean, it makes me want to spec into like Aftershock stuff for the Titan Ascendancy. I don't know if I'm going to do that yet, but I also have damage nodes up here when I do get blood magic. These are also really nice. I know a lot, it's a popular warrior choice to have like a time lost jewel in here and then just get a bunch of these small passives because they're all pretty useful around this area. So it makes sense. I might do that as well. Oh, and also real quick, if I do go Giant Split, I think I might respect to go down this way because honestly, I've gone down here. I've used two-handed warriors with these nodes and these are good, but this 5% reduced attack speed you really feel. It's pretty rough, and I think you need to make up for that as a two-handed warrior by getting attack speed elsewhere. And honestly, one of the best nodes that's close by is right here. Grabbing these nodes here will give you attack speed, obviously accuracy, some dexterity in this big one, or in the notable passive here. And obviously Lay Siege is pretty close by as well. You know, that'll give you 1% increased damage per 1% chance to block. So, you know, if your block chance is high enough, it would make sense to grab this. And then ultimately you can get some damage from these nodes here. These are also two-handed weapon damage nodes, and there is one that gives you, again, kind of similar to the other one, big damage with reduced attack speed, but at least you'll be making it up for it with blurred motion here and some of the other swing speed nodes here. So I think as Giant's Blood, or if I was using the two-hander, I would go down here at some point to grab this swing speed here and grab these two-handed damage nodes here. You got to cancel out the swing speed, especially if you're going to like grab this one. And then if you grab these, it would take like 2 years for you to get an attack off. Also, real quick, I should just mention these are my take on leveling builds I'd pursue. I'm sure there are some others out there, you know, some might lean into using Shockwave Totem more or something like that. So they might, you know, progress down here and grab these nodes for Totem, you know, buffing up your Totem a good bit. And then, you know, somebody might also go for Bleed in their build and like other ailments. I'm just letting you guys know what has been working for me personally. And again, it's been mostly a breeze leveling like this, so we'll see if I hit any walls with this method. But anyways, let's get to the next part of the video. Usually I go over my gear in this part of my build videos, but this time around it sort of goes hand in hand with like some general tips I'd want to give you with itemization during, you know, if you're in this league, hardcore solo self-found. And so I figured I'd just turn this part into more of like a tips and tricks section. So let's get started. Tip number 1, and this might be obvious, but you should be checking the vendors constantly for upgrades when you're leveling up, especially in this league. Like obviously you don't have to buy every minute upgrade if you're already using a rare quality weapon or something that you found semi-recently, but if you're using a rare from Act 1 into Act 2, you should be checking the weapon vendor because the upgrade will be a sizable DPS increase and you'll likely be killing mobs in 1 less hit, priming them for stuns 1 hit earlier, etc. Real quick, I'll just mouse over the gear that I'm using. These boots are okay. I wish they had some movement speed on them, honestly, but you can see these are all rares I either found or bought. This Mace I actually bought from the vendor recently because it was a pretty big upgrade for me. But that's currently what my gear is looking like as of this moment. Really, I'm just trying to tank up, you know, and I have 60% armor and 30% block, which I think is good. Well, actually, I'm not really sure relative to Act 2 how good it is, but it seems to be strong right now for me, so I'm chilling. Lightning resistance is low, so I may consider like finding a way to boost it up, especially since I feel like the most dangerous attacks from the Act 2 boss are lightning based, but that's just theory craft for now. All right, tip number 2. Don't be afraid to take it slow. Might sound boring, but remember, you only have 1 life, so even if you're playing a more aggressive build, don't get yourself into shitty situations. You know, sometimes you're gonna find yourself in one, but it's important to stay calm, don't panic, use your abilities logically to get yourself out of the shitty situation. Boss fights might put you a little more on edge, so again, try your best to remain collected, dodge attacks you know you should dodge instead of trying to get that extra damage in, and play this like a Souls-like, you know, try to take as few hits as possible and try to avoid all the big hits, you know, if you can. All right, tip number 3, don't be afraid to use your currency. I think I only do this when I am in dire need of an upgrade, and I'm getting unlucky with the vendors. But if something will be a huge upgrade for you, you should consider just using your currency to craft something because, well, there's no trading anyway, so that currency is potentially just sitting there being wasted when it could be helping you, especially if you're struggling. You know, I think orbs of alchemy are particularly nice if you're trying to get a decent weapon upgrade. You know, just grab a normal quality weapon and slap it with that orb. It may end up being shitty, but it may end up being a decent to amazing amazing upgrade. The chances are in your favor if you are, again, in need of an upgrade. Number 4, and I think I did this my first time through softcore, but you should be over leveled for your ascendancies. Listen, I run Trial of Sekhemas a ton on my main, but I would not go in there at the level that you get Balbala's Barrier. Like, that trial can be so brutal if you get unlucky, so you definitely want to be a bit over leveled before you attempt it, and I think I may try just before or just after fighting the Act 2 boss, but you could probably wait even longer if you really wanted. Just make sure that you can complete it without dying. Real quick, it's important to note though that you can fail the trial, in other words, lose all your honor, but it won't be considered a real death, so you won't get knocked out of the hardcore league. So at least there's that, but again, just make sure you don't actually get killed in the trial. The same advice goes for the Trial of Chaos, which I think feels even more brutal at the level that you can unlock it. Get a bit stronger before attempting a run, though I'm not actually sure if dying in that trial knocks you out of the league, since there's no honor mechanic. Might count as a real death, so I'd be extra cautious there, but I'm actually not sure myself, so I'd have to check up on that. Tip number 5, gold feels a lot more important since you always want to have enough for an upgrade, especially during the early parts of the run. So you want to make sure they don't spend too much on respecking or anything, so try to commit to one of the paths, that I laid out for you, either aggressive or tanky, or if you end up following another guy, just try not to spend too much money early on respecking, because, you want it for gear upgrades at any time. So yeah, a bit of a quicker tip here, but still an important one in my opinion. And last thing I'll say about the league is, enjoy it. Like, it feels really fun, and it's kind of refreshing knowing that, hey, you just gotta roll with what you get, just improvise, adapt, overcome. I'm honestly having a ton of fun with it. It feels like I'm on the edge of my seat a bit more since you don't want to make any fatal mistakes, but I kind of like that, strangely enough. I think it's kind of a fun way to push yourself if you've grown comfortable with the current experience of the game and you haven't tried out this league yet, obviously. Why not? Try it out. Test your experience and your game knowledge, Anyways, that's it for this video. I'm going to see how far I can take this character, and I know I'm not streaming it or anything. If I had more time, I would, and you'll just have to take my word on it. But I'm not doing any, press escape shenanigans or return to checkpoint shenanigans. I'm just rolling with it normally. And hey, if I die, I'll just go again. So I'm just recording every session so I can, catch my death if it happens on some footage and you guys can see it. But, I'm not going to die. In the spirit of my build videos, I'm going to leave you guys with some gameplay footage. Obviously not as flashy or insane as the Magma Barrier clearing that I usually do, but I thought, hey, some early game fighting is kind of intense in a different way, especially with one life, so I figured I'd play a few clips of standard gameplay, but also include whatever happens to, in the Trial of Sekhemas and the Act 2 boss. Oh, and real quick, I'm not going to play the entire Trial of Sekhemas in this video, but I will show you the relevant moments and describe the choices that I made and what was going through my head, as I was progressing through the trial, in case you guys decide to run this league and get to this point. So, hopefully you'll find that helpful, and let me know if you are interested in these solo self-found hardcore journey updates on this character. I don't have to only do build updates. I can make videos showing the progression of this character, how things are going, etc., until we hopefully make it to the end game. But yeah, that's going to be it from me. Enjoy the clips. I'll see you guys next time.
my people! The enemy of the fire god is now! Our hate!
Take that!
This hate! The era of the fire god is now! Take our hate! The battle! Cannot give up! Die, foolish Sekhemas!
Asala!
I'm ready.
You were no warrior.
The ritual has been disrupted. Impressive endurance. An oasis in the desert.
Gruesome creature!
My satchel is full.
A moment of respite. I shall aid you. Onwards. Always. This will end. We will succeed.
I will overcome this challenge.
It burns!
Ah!